Good evening. I call to order the Lake Havasu City Council regular meeting and our property tax levy adoption on Tuesday, July 9th, 2024 at 5:30 p.m. We'll now have an invocation from Pastor Dale Ray from Lakeview Community Church, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Heidi Greedy from the Don't Be Greedy nonprofit.
Good evening. I read from 1 Timothy chapter 2, which says, I urge then, first of all, that petitions, prayers, intercession, and thanksgiving be made for all people, for kings and all those in authority, that they may live peaceful and quiet lives in all godliness and holiness. So, precious Heavenly Father, as we bow our heads, I ask that you give guidance and grace to the men and women serving our city, for the mayor, the council, administrative and advisory staff members, police and fire departments, and the various agents and agencies of Lake Havasu City. I pray that you keep them safe and strengthened by your mighty hand. I pray for those seeking to hold office on a local and state level. Give your heavenly guidance in the citizens or those citizens of the city and the state as we make our selection. And may all who live here live peaceably and uphold the laws of Lake Havasu City. Lord, I pray, use each of us to serve compassionately and justly to your glory and honor. In the mighty name of Jesus, I pray. Amen.
Would you all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you and welcome, Heidi. If you'd like to share a little bit about your organization.
Sure. My name, like you said, is Heidi Greedy, and my organization is Don't Be Greedy Nonprofit. I started this nonprofit in November of last year after I lost my husband in August of 2023 to colon cancer. We found out once he was diagnosed that it's kind of difficult in Lake Havasu to get medical care, and a lot of people have to travel for chemotherapy, major surgeries, and things like that. And while my husband was in the hospital, he made a comment at how fortunate we were that we still had a home in California, that I was able to be by his side while he was in the hospital. And he asked if I would take points from our credit card and donate them to families in Lake Havasu who weren't so fortunate, who had to travel for medical care. So obviously at the time I was like, yeah. So after he passed, I sat down with my kids and told them the story. And I said, I want to start a nonprofit, and this is what I want to do. I want to give money and raise money so people who have to leave Havasu to get medical care, we help pay for their lodging and their travel expenses so that they can have a loved one by their side. And so it said, first thing you have to do, I went online and said, how do you start a nonprofit? It says, pick a name. And my daughter-in-law said, that's easy, because my last name's Greedy. She said, don't be greedy. So we did our first event at Bunker Bar in February, and we raised just over $20,000 in February. And we have been able so far, since May, we started giving out applications, and we've blessed 7 people in our city who have had to travel. People with we have a couple people who have breast cancer, a gentleman who had a bone marrow transplant in Arizona, in Gilbert. And we just gave money to a family who has a 5-month-old baby who was born with birth defects. And we're pending giving the check to a gentleman who just got a liver transplant. So we found that it's very much a need in this area because, unfortunately, we are small town. You know, we're a big town, but a small town. And so there's a lot of things that people have to travel for. So I just wanted to share that. We are having our second event. It's actually this Friday. There are very limited tickets left, but we're having a charity gala at the London Bridge Convention Center. It's a runway fashion show. And so we invite anybody if they still want to come. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing what you do with your organization. And Lake Havasu City is such a special place because of people like you and others that stand up. So thank you so much for being here today and for all the great work you're doing for our community. We'll move on to the next item on our agenda, which is roll call. Ms. Williams, if you please call the roll.
Council members Nancy Campbell. Here. Michelle Lynn. Jenny Koch.
Here.
Jim Dolan,
Here.
David Lane,
Here.
Vice Mayor Cameron Moses,
Here.
Mayor Cal Sheehy.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 5 is our consent agenda. Would any of the council members like to remove any of the items for separate discussion?
Mayor,
Councilmember Koch,
motion?
please.
Move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilmember Koch, a second from Councilmember Lane. Is there any additional discussion? Seeing none, we're ready to vote. Councilmember Dolan?
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. The next item is item 6, correspondence, communications, petitions, announcements, and the city manager report. Item 6.1 is to announce vacancies on Lake Havasu City boards, committees, and commissions. Ms. Williams?
Mayor and City Council, there are several vacancies on the Havasu City Board, Committees, and Commissions. The following is a listing of those vacancies. Actually, just right now, we have on the Board of Adjustment, 1 regular member and 1 alternate member. Anyone interested in applying can pick up a packet at City Hall, and they are also available on the city's website at lhcaz.gov. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 6.2 is our city manager's report. Good evening, Mr. Knudsen.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Well, I hope everyone celebrated responsibly for New Year's Eve just a couple days ago, as we are now in our new fiscal year. So happy new fiscal year. We are officially in the 24-25 fiscal year, embarking on a fresh journey filled with new goals and many, many opportunities. This year's budget sets the stage for continued progress, enhancing our services and achieving our strategic goals. And we are all very excited about what the future holds for us this year. On Friday, June 28th, Lake Havasu City officials, together with local legislators, including Senator Borelli and Representative Biasucci, were joined by Mayor Sheehy, Councilmembers Lane and Campbell, and myself, as well as the Chamber of Commerce. And we gathered to mark the completion of a long-awaited repavement project for State Route 95. The project involved replacing approximately 26 miles of the heavily used roadway from Sarah Park all the way up to I-40, strengthening our first impression for Lake Havasu City. Mayor Sheehy, along with Councilmember Nancy Campbell, you participated in the College for Kids program, teaching our students about local government and the role of Lake Havasu City. And lastly, another reminder that Lake Havasu City is holding a primary election on Tuesday, July 30th, just a couple weeks away, for the purpose of electing 3 council members. Early voting for the primary election is held at the Mojave County Library, located at 1770 McCulloch Boulevard North, from Wednesday, July 3rd through Friday, July 26th. And that's Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Registered voters may request an early ballot be mailed to them by 5 o'clock on Friday, July 19th. For additional information about this election, please contact Kelly Williams in our city clerk's office at 928-453-4142. And with that, Mayor and Council, that concludes my report for this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Knudsen. All right, we'll move on to item 7, which is our public hearings. During each of our public hearings, we will have an opportunity for the public to engage with the conversation. We do encourage you to do so if you have any comments, questions, or thoughts during each of those items, rather than waiting to the end where there's a call to the public where we can only have a one-way conversation. We can listen intently, but because the item's not on the agenda, we won't be able to have a two-way conversation. I'll go over that again as we get to that portion of it, but just encouraging you to participate during the items as they may appear. There will be countdown clock on each of the screens. When you do speak, it'll change colors to yellow and red as the time starts to dwindle. But we'll start with item 7.1, which is Series 13 Farm Winery Liquor License for Water's Edge Winery at 2200 Mesquite Avenue. Ms. Williams.
Mayor and City Council, Todd Patrick Wiley has applied for a Series 13 Farm Winery Liquor License for Water's Edge Winery located at 2200 Mesquite Avenue. All posting requirements have been made, all fees have been paid, and no objections were received within the 20-day public posting period. The application was provided to you in your packet. I'm happy to answer any questions, and the applicant is also here tonight to answer any questions from the City Council.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Are there any questions from members of the council for Ms. Williams or for the applicant? All right, this is a public hearing. Would anyone like to address the City Council on this item? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing, bring it back to council for discussion or possible motion.
Mayor, motion.
Councilmember Lane.
I move to recommend that the Arizona Department of Liquor Licenses and Control approve a series number 13 farm winery liquor license for Water's Edge Winery at 2200 Mesquite Avenue.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilmember Lane, a second from Vice Mayor Moses. Is there any additional discussion? Seeing none, we're ready to vote. Councilmember Dolan.
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. Item 7.2 is a presentation of Strategic Transportation Safety Plan. Ms. Lajewski.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Sarah Lajewski with Lake Havasu Metropolitan Planning Organization, also known as LHMPO. Tonight, with the help of Greenlight Engineering, we will be presenting the update from the Strategic Transportation Safety Plan. Greenlight will discuss the status of the plan's update, provide updated crash statistics, and solicit feedback from the public on the region's roadway safety. We have our postcards with the survey QR code, and we ask that you please take a moment to fill it out virtually. Now I'll turn it over to Josh Barger with Greenlight Traffic Engineering. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Council and public, this is really going to be a discussion about our efforts in conjunction with the nearby WACOG MPO to update the region's transportation safety plan. I'm going to cover a couple of things that are really going to speak to the safety of the roadways within the Lake Havasu MPO region. Let me start out really quick and direct your attention to this slide PowerPoint on your screen. Like I mentioned, this is going to be a update to a pre-existing transportation safety plan in partnership with WACOG and Lake Havasu MPO. My name is Josh Barger, and the principal in charge of this is Mike Blankenship. While we're doing this update to the pre-existing safety plan, we're going to be seeking oversight from not only the council, but also the technical advisory committees of WACOG and Lake Havasu MPO, and also seeking public input, like Sarah just mentioned about these postcards. We're going to be talking a little bit about here in a couple of minutes. So when we're looking at the transportation safety within the region, we decided to look at the last 5 years of crash data. This crash data comes from ADOT and is collected during every crash incident that's recorded by a police officer in the state of Arizona. During the last 5 years that we have access to, this is from 2018 to 2022, we've seen 26 people die within the Lake Havasu MPO region. Now, the region being largely Lake Havasu City and a little bit of the county, Mojave County around. We're going to talk a little bit more about where those crashes are. But really, this is going to be focused a lot on the local roadways and some of the state roadways within the region. Additionally, we have just over 1,200 people being injured. This is within a 5-year time period. These aren't small numbers for a small community. Do you know 1,200 people? Maybe that's more than you know. And this many people are getting injured in vehicles on your roadways. This is what we're looking to address. Additionally, overall, we have 2,900 crashes in the region. Now, the previous transportation safety plan had a vision and a goal. These are largely stemming from the ADOT state transportation safety plan, and they're influenced by and large by the Federal Highway Administration's Vision Zero goal. We'll talk a bit about that here in a minute. These are the previous vision and goals that we're looking at retaining unless we have other public comment or other comments that say otherwise. And the vision is looking towards reaching that zero deaths by making a safer Lake Havasu region. And we're going to do that with our goal, which is incremental improvements in this crash data that we're looking at here, 3 to 7% over the next 5 years when we expect this safety plan to get updated once more. Now, here's the QR code. It's in English and Spanish. This is found on these note cards we have outside in the hallway there. If you want to pick them up, you can also scan them here. And what we're doing is we're seeking your input, the public's input, as to what is your perception of road safety in the region. Now, it's going to look like a typical online survey. You're going to also have spots to drop a pin and put a comment on a specific location where you have a safety concern. And we're going to be looking at, in the grand scheme of things with the safety plan, pursuing projects that'll address those safety concerns to reduce those crashes in the region. A little bit more about those crashes that I mentioned earlier. We performed a crash data analysis in our engineering firm, looking to try to tailor our recommendations for your region. You can see on the screen here, these are the many crashes that were recorded in that 5-year time period. It essentially outlines where the corridors are in the region. There are typically a lot of crashes. Breaking those down a little bit for you to get a better understanding. We have every year a trend, it's about even within the region of about 600 crashes or so. Shy of the year 2020, which is a reduction in crashes largely because of the reduction in traffic volume because of the pandemic. And it's important to note that even though there was a reduction in overall crashes during that year, the crashes that did occur, the trend we saw was a higher severity, more serious injury and fatal crashes due to the lack of volume and increased speeds. This is a national trend and not specifically for the region. The county trend, which is just, we're capturing just a couple of crashes here. I'll break those down here in a minute. It's following a little bit of an upward trend, and it seems to be capturing a lot of that State Route 95 traffic. I know everybody enjoys tables, but I'll try to get the highlights out of these next couple tables to give you a better understanding of what I'm talking about here. So within the region, the top, what we call crash manner, these are really the way in which the crash first happened. We have angle crashes coming out on top with the most crashes, and then also left turn crashes. These are code for really intersection type crashes that could be at a stop sign or a signal. Typically signals reduce those types of crashes. And then the next highest concern we have are single vehicle crashes, coming out with 523 crashes over 5 years. And these mean typically departing the roadway. So no other vehicle is involved and we're leaving the roadway for some reason. We did a little bit more crash data analysis that is looking at really comparing the region to the state on average. If you look here in this left-hand column, focus areas, these are the typical areas of traffic safety that we can address. All of the ones that are bolded are ones that are higher. They have an overrepresentation in the region than the state average. That being said, each of these is going to glean to us that there's an issue here on, for example, unrestrained and unknown. This is talking about not wearing a seatbelt. So if you look here, you have 17.4% of all the crashes in the region that involve somebody not wearing a safety device, where if you look at the state average, it's 16.1%. So there's a little bit higher on average of people involved in car crashes that are not wearing a seatbelt. To really get to the point on this, I'll go to the next slide here. These are our list out of our overrepresentation analysis that we'd like to focus on within the region as far as prescribing projects and looking at developing improvements to the road network. So restraint use, really making sure that folks are, they know that they should be using their seatbelts and safety devices. Motorcycles, very scenic drive here, especially on state route that's cutting through town. So we've got a lot of motorcycle traffic. Intersections, we saw that in the crash data a little bit earlier. It's a concern. Lane departure, that's those single vehicle crashes leaving the roadway. Nighttime crashes has shown up as an overrepresentation also. So we're looking into nighttime areas, typically intersection street lighting. We can combine these and really address both 2 or 3 things at once, say intersection lighting we've got nighttime and intersection covered in one, for example, as a project. Speeding and aggressive driving. And lastly, distracted driving. This one is new. Distracted driving, if you've seen any of these safety plans before, hasn't been typically recorded by the state crash report. And really, it's starting to emerge as a high concern because it's really hard to track, especially if it's a fatal crash. Really hard to get them to admit they were on their phone, for instance. But really, we're looking at trying to address those types of crashes as well. So to do one more deep dive into the crash data that we've been looking at, a network screening is really an analysis that we do that looks at finding where exactly are we concerned with crashes. So what are the top intersections? What are the top segments within the region? This is our top 20 list. It is a little bit hard to see, but the top one right now is Acoma Boulevard and State Route 95. Having one fatal crash and 2 suspected serious injury crashes at that location. I'd also like to point out here, the 6th one down here, Lake Havasu Avenue and South Palo Verde Boulevard. This one having one fatal crash. Through this update of the Transportation Safety Plan, we have submitted a ADOT HSIP grant application for this location in partnership with Lake Havasu MPO. To put a traffic signal in. So that is one of these top intersections looking to be addressed. And you can see we have plenty more that we'd like to get improved. All right, in kind, we have the top segments. These are the top 20 segments within the region. You can notice a trend here. By and large, we are seeing the top one and the next 6 or so are on SR 95. These are accounting for 2 fatal crashes and approximately 6 serious injury crashes. The trend here is rear end crashes and rear end fatal crashes. It's not a typical thing we would see. Rear ends do not usually result in fatal crashes. So we've noticed that this is something that we'd like to look a little bit more into. Typically, rear-end crashes are some of the less severe type crash types, but on SR 95, in advance of some of these traffic signals, we're seeing a lot of, sometimes even 4 in a row, fatal crashes involving rear-end collisions. And then it's also worth noting, Lake Havasu Avenue is that second on our list for segments here. Now, as I come to a close here, what we're really looking at doing is not just focusing on crash data. Like I said, we did go through a bit of crash data analysis, and we're looking at everything from that angle, but we really do get a lot from public input when we're looking at making an updated safety plan that is to serve your region and is not necessarily tailored exactly in the mind of an engineer like me. So we would greatly appreciate the council and the public's input through the online survey here, through that QR code or these postcards that you can find out in the entrance there on the table. And with that, I'll leave it open for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Barger. Are there questions from members of the council? Yeah, Councilmember Campbell?
Mayor, yes, and I will go online and explain this further, but I get a lot of complaints, and I see it myself, that on Highway 95, where we have a lot of the incidents, people aren't paying attention, they're going too fast. We know what's happening there, but the synchronization we're working on, but it seems as if a lot of people are running the lights from heavy trucks. It's almost, I've heard several people state if there was a way like a countdown or a warning, but I don't even know if that helps. You're the engineer that deals with this all the time. What would be your solution to slowing down all the red lights that are being ran? They're hitting it right at the yellow and they're just still continuing to go through the next car. And that's why I think we see so many on 95. Plus, they're just not paying attention.
Yes, so there's a couple of factors there. By and large, to change a driver's behavior, well, in traffic engineering, we look at driver's behavior and the infrastructure in addition to a couple other things. We can look at education campaigns, making sure that the region has a well-informed public that knows that you really shouldn't be running red lights. What are the consequences of? But by and large, that's it's an issue within the state. There's been a couple of recent studies that have shown that the Valley area in particular has a higher than usual rate in the nation of red light runners, and including deep into the red light running. Options that can also be explored to address that on an engineering side would be to play with loosely. This is going to be a decision by the city. The yellow interval time, we call it, so the length of that yellow light, to give folks enough time to recognize it is going to be turning red and to either travel through that intersection or come to a complete stop. Those are a couple of things that we can look at too.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Is there a standard on the yellow light? How long is that supposed to be?
There is. There's actually ADOT standard, and cities can set their own standard. We did a update my firm for the city of Glendale recently. I don't have the exact measure off the top of my head. It's within the 2 second, 3 second range for what we've done typically, but they can be changed. And there's also guidance from the Federal Highway Administration on what range you should be looking at for these yellow intervals.
Are there any additional questions for members of the council? All right, this is a public hearing. Would anyone like to address the council or have any questions for Mr. Barger? Yeah, please just make your way to the podium, state your name for the record. And
good afternoon. My name is Emiliano Torres. I'm a resident. Just one question. None of the statistics address how many passengers in a vehicle. A motorcycle typically has one, possibly two. A car can have 4 to 6, but a car only counts as one crash. I would just wonder if that statistic was included. Thank you.
That is a great point. Yes, actually, that statistic is included. At the beginning of this, I mentioned that we have 26 fatal crashes, for instance, in the last 5 years. If we look back at our chart, when we look at the crash types, there's only one vehicle to consider as the at-fault vehicle, and the reason for that. And we only looked, let's see here. We only looked at 24 fatal crashes, although that'll glean from this that there was 2 passengers that ended up having a fatality in that. So we look at it from both angles. We look at it from passengers in the vehicle, and then also the at-fault driver counting as one in our statistics.
thank you. Anyone else would like to address yeah, please just again, make your way to the podium and state your name for the record.
I'm Pam Swenson. I do have a question with the options with regards to the intersections. You talked about perhaps prolonging a yellow so that they had more time to stop. What about also prolonging the red for the other direction of the intersection so that both sides would be red for a longer period of time? Because I think I've been in communities where that's happened, and I think that really does eliminate some of that red light passing.
Yeah, great feedback. Is there standards on that?
Yes, actually, they're in the same group as the yellow-red intervals. So actually, that term is called all-red interval. It is in the same guidelines we mentioned earlier. There's guidelines, like I mentioned, from Federal Highway Administration all the way through ADOT, and we've done exactly the same for City of Glendale in my firm. All red does increase the safety of an intersection, especially for red light runners. It is coming at the cost, though, of traffic operations and efficiency through this intersection. We have terms that we use to measure the efficiency of a signal. We call them level of service. Not to get too technical, but the level of service grade really gives you an idea on how efficiently it's operating, and if folks are going to be reaching that point in which they'll disregard the signal because they've been waiting at it for so long, is a side effect that could happen for a really inefficient signal. So like anything, it is a balance, and that's why there's guidelines out there for us to look at. But it is something the city can look at implementing signal timing standards on their own.
Councilmember Campbell?
Would that be a ADOT issue because of the Highway 95, or is this something that Lake Havasu City can implement as being part of the city?
That's a great question. So ADOT has their own standards for their signals that they manage. Now, if the signals, I haven't looked, if the signals on 95 are maintained by ADOT, which I expect they would be, that would be an ADOT project. And I'm not sure what the process would be to coordinate with them to see if there could be a change on that. But like I said, they have their own standard, or it can be set and changed. Now the city can change theirs with their signals, but ADOT has authority over their signals.
Great. Yeah. Would anyone else like to address the council? Have any questions? Yeah, just please make your way to the podium and state your name for the record.
Tim Murray, I'm a resident. Who has authority over the state highway for traffic speed? Is it the state police? I don't know. I'm just asking a question. Who has the authority? Who enforces the traffic speed on SR 95? And who has a vested interest in making sure that people don't run yellow lights on SR 95? Is that the state?
It's a combination. So like Havasu PD, so stop and slow down because they're going to get you. Or also the state highway patrol can do that.
Okay, so the local police, the chief doesn't really have overall responsibility. Is that what we're saying?
No, they do. Yeah, and they're out there doing traffic monitoring all of the time.
So how often do the state police come in and do any kind of speed traps? I mean, I've never seen them, and I've never gotten caught in a speed trap, to be honest with you. I was a police commissioner, so I couldn't do that. But how often do they come into town? And is this data going to be available to them?
Yeah, the data will be available to them for sure. I don't have an interval of when DPS comes up in.
The data is available too?
Yes, yeah. So the crash data, not only once we complete this report and update, we're going to have all the crash data available, but the crash data is available through ADOT upon request by an agency, with a couple of things that need to be done to agree upon the fair use of that data. But the data that we're showing here today is going to be available in a public document upon the completion of this updated safety plan. The old safety plan, which covers 5 years prior, is currently available online, and you can look at the crash data there as well.
Thank you.
Mayor,
Councilmember Campbell.
one more question. When do we plan on having this new updated study done?
So we're looking at the latter half of this year, and it might not be available to the public until early in 2025.
Thank you.
Is that right, Sarah? Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, Bonnie Toy. So, a couple questions. And the one question is, why only 3 to 7% reduction? Why not 100% reduction? And then I also wanted to make a suggestion recently about Mulberry. After I've been driving down Lake Havasu Avenue for so long, the light at Mulberry, oh my gosh, imagine if you turned on a blinking right turn only light when it would be appropriate for people to be able to turn right and get onto the highway. So then the people in that right lane wouldn't be so aggravated. And then I really have this weird question about the myth of synchronizing all the lights. So if I get on the highway at London Bridge Road in 95 and go all the way down 95, but when I start, it's a red light, does that mean I'm synchronized to all the red lights? Or when I start, is it a green light? At what point, how do you get synchronized? I don't comprehend that. And I feel like, honestly, it's a myth. How do you do that?
Yeah, thank you for your questions. Yeah.
I'm making sure that I catch all of these. So I'll address that first question. The vision and goal, we're talking a goal of a reduction of 3 to 7% in those fatal and serious injury crashes. That is really the why not zero question. That is really what we're getting at when the vision is we'd like to reach zero. You know, the Vision Zero, which is a initiative put forth by Federal Highway Administration, is making sure that folks do not have to pay for traveling on the roadway with their life. And we are really trying to reach zero. Now, as a performance metric that we're looking at reaching, how do we know if we're reaching zero? Well, setting small steps to try to get there is historically what's been done. But like I said, these are open for your comment. You can add this as a comment here as well if you want to add that to your input on the public survey. Additionally, so I missed the question there in the middle. What was that one?
Mulberry, which again, Ms. Toy, you can add that to your survey as well, your comment there. Yeah, Ms. Toy, yeah, we need to be on a microphone, but yeah, so you add that comment on your survey for Mulberry. And then when it comes to synchronization, I don't know if you're prepared to, that's a whole different topic. So if you're prepared to answer that question, great. If not, then we can wait until we're talking about that.
I'd rather leave it to ADOT to answer questions about coordination of signals on their corridor. And we're looking at safety-oriented items here rather than operations.
Would anyone else like to address? Yeah, please just make your way to the podium and state your name for the record.
Pat Willett, resident. My question was on your stats and surveys. You had one up there that said suspected serious injuries for a lot of listings. How do you determine a suspected serious injury? And are you putting that on there to make it look like there's more danger in what's actually out on the road right now? When I saw that, I was just curious on how do you determine, why would you put a suspected item on a survey? So that was my question for you.
No, that's a great question. So the injury severity for each of these, they're determined by the officer on scene and additionally a follow-up investigation by that officer who's doing that crash report. The term suspected serious injury, it's a box that's checked in the ADOT crash report. We have no injury all the way up to fatal injury, and a lot of these in between are suspected, the terminology in there. Now, suspected serious injury, I can give you a little bit of a definition on that one. It typically includes somebody, for example, that has a broken arm or needs assistance exiting the vehicle. You could think using the jaws of life with the fire department removing them, but it was a serious injury. They certainly went to the hospital. These can typically lead to fatal injuries or injuries. But it gets a little bit more nuanced if those do change later on in the hospital, for instance. But to answer your question, the ranks of the injuries are answered on the crash form by the police officer.
Would anyone else like to address on this item?
Good evening, Council, City Manager. I have an observation that might help us with the red light running. I've just been on the road for the last 4 weeks hauling a fifth wheel. I agree, our highway, I don't even let my daughters drive on it because it is dangerous. But something that helped me on the road is they had these flashing signals that said when they start flashing, there's a signal ahead and the signal's got to change. That stopped me in my tracks a lot of times. When those signals start flashing, you know that light's going to change, and it helped a lot. I don't know if that's something we've considered. But just an observation being on the road.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. So those advanced warning beacons, there are some present on 95 already. And they're, like he mentioned, they're great. Those typically can serve to address those rear end collisions that we have a high uptick in the crash data. We were going to be looking at those further and kind of comparing and contrasting some locations that do have those advanced warning beacons for a signal and those that don't, and seeing if those are really being useful on 95 and in the city or not. So that can be a recommendation that comes out of the safety plan.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address the council on this item? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Mr. Barger, do you have any additional information?
No, thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any final questions from members of the council? All right. Excellent. So for those in the room and those watching on at home, please grab your phone and take a photo of this QR code and share your feedback. You can rewind at home as well to get it and grab that QR code, share your feedback so we can get all of the information so that we can have a comprehensive safety plan. Thank you, Ms. Lajewski, for your work at the MPO, and thank you, Mr. Barger, for being here. All right, we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, which is item 7.3, which is adopt resolution number 24-3770, levying 0.6718 upon the assessed valuation of the property within Lake Havasu City, subject to taxation upon each $100 valuation, sufficient to raise the amount estimated to be required in the annual budget, less the amount estimated to be received from fines, licenses, and other sources of revenue, which is additional levy amount of $301,578, excluding new construction due to the increase in assessed valuation, providing for a general fund for the general municipal expenses for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2025. Ms. Olson.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. Tonight is the final action required by council as part of the entire FY25 budget process. We conducted the public hearing at your last meeting, so we took any comments at that time, and we are now putting forth the resolution that would adopt the actual property tax levy. For the general fund, the tax rate, as we've stated prior, is remaining the same as it has been for the last few fiscal years. The assessed valuation did increase, as you can see on the table. And when we apply that tax rate, we then get the tax levy. So since that revenue is going up, there is an actual increase in revenue that we will be collecting. Part of that increase is due to new construction, and part of it is due to the increase in the assessed valuation of existing properties. And with that, I will answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Olson. Are there any questions or comments from members of the council? All right, this is a public hearing. Would anyone like to address the city council on this item? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back to council for any discussion or possible motion.
Mayor, motion.
Yeah, Councilmember Lane.
I move to adopt resolution number 24-3770, adopting the Lake Havasu City property tax levy rate of 0.6718 per $100 assessed value for fiscal year 24-25.
We have a motion from Councilmember Lane, a second from Councilmember Koch. Is there any additional discussion? Yeah, I will just mention there has been some posts on social media that were raising taxes and going down those lines. Seems like this item is moving pretty quick because it's the very final thing that we're doing as part of our budget for fiscal year 25. So our tax rate, this will be the 7th year that the tax rate remains the same. There is a state statute that requires us to have a truth in taxation hearing, which we, as Ms. Olson mentioned, we had last meeting, which shows that the increase is that $300,000. New construction equates to about a little over $105,000 or so. But to have all that together, we have to have these public hearings so that it's open and transparent. But the item was much slower when we started the budget process, and now that we've are at the very final stage, that's why this is moving so quickly. Any other comments? All right, we're ready to vote. Councilmember Dolan?
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. Item 7.4 is adopt resolution number 24-3771, adopting the property tax levy and certifying the annual financial requirements of Lake Havasu City Improvement District number 2 for the London Bridge Plaza for fiscal year 24-25. Ms. Olson?
Thank you again. The city does have one improvement district number 2, which is referred to as the London Bridge Plaza. This improvement district is in place to include maintenance and operation of the parking lot at that location, the lighting, any water service and landscaping for that area. The property tax rate will stay the same, but due to a slight increase in assessed valuation, there will be a small increase in the amount of revenue collected. Put that up there. Sorry about that. So it's going up maybe $300 a year in total. So not extensive. As we did with the other item, we conducted the public hearing in June, and there are no additional actions needed for this other than to adopt this resolution and apply this property tax. With that, I'll answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Olson. So the London Bridge, or the Improvement District Number 2, or the London Bridge Plaza, is also known as the swap meet area. So to put perspective of the area we're talking about. Are there any questions from members of the council for Ms. Olson? Councilmember Campbell?
One question, and I know we discussed it in depth, I think, last year, but does that include the asphalt? Like that $17,000, does that include maintaining the parking lots?
Ms. Olson or Vice Mayor Moses?
Yeah, I can speak to it because I'm a property owner down there, and I go to all of the board meetings. So we have the swap meet, and that swap meet, the association uses the swap meet. We lease it from the city with agreement that we all vote on. And then so we use the funds from the swap meet to pave that parking lot, to pave the parking lots down there. And so that's how we're able to make our taxes so low, to both maintain the parking lot and the bathrooms and the landscaping and all that. So that's how we're able to do all that and still maintain our tax rate to be that low.
Mayor, can I ask you one more question then? The other side, like where the chamber building is, that parking area there, does that include that? And who maintains those parking lots?
The association. The association oversees most of it.
Thank you.
Yeah, when you start getting beyond the typical swap meet area where you go down for vendors, there does start to get, it's a little bit different as some of those parking lots merge together on who's maintaining those areas. So although, Vice Mayor Moses's comments are correct, it's not as cut and dry as that. So it does change a little bit on different parcels as you start to get to the front of that, near like the chamber building, Wave, Culinary School. Some of those areas are a little bit different than that. Yeah.
So basically the board would be responsible to make sure that that was maintained and properly striped and handicap handled, would be the one that oversees all of that, or
the areas they're responsible for, which is not all of that,
Okay.
but it's most of that.
All right. It's just confusing. A lot of people ask, and I'm thinking that little tiny amount of money that we get each year doesn't really probably do much of anything.
If there's anybody that asks, they can come to one of the board meetings. So you give them my information, and I'll make sure they get the information for the board meeting for that association.
Perfect. Thank you.
Absolutely. They're dark right now, so I think they come back in September.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like all of the original parking lots from Mr. McCulloch's days, it is very confusing. So not just in that neighborhood, in any neighborhood that is one of the McCulloch parking lots. All right. Any additional questions or comments for Ms. Olson? All right. This is a public hearing. Would anyone like to address the council on this item? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back to council for any additional discussion or possible motion.
Mayor, motion.
Councilmember Lane.
I move to adopt resolution number 24-3771, adopting the Lake Havasu City Improvement District Number 2, London Bridge Plaza, property tax levy rate at 0.7370 per $100 assessed value for fiscal year 24-25.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilmember Lane, a second from Vice Mayor Moses. Is there any additional discussion? Seeing none, we're ready to vote. Councilmember Dolan.
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. The next item is item 7.5, adopt resolution number 24-3767, approving a minor general plan amendment revising the future land use map designations for 70, 80, 90, and 100 Inlet Drive, track 2293, amended, block 5, lots 1 through 4, approximately 2.5 acres from low density residential to high density residential. Mr. Gobert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. The subject properties for this case are located at 70 to 100 Inlet Drive and comprise approximately 2.5 acres in total. The applicant had intended to construct 50 new dwelling units in 22 buildings, but has officially withdrawn the application for the rezoning and general development plan approval that would have followed this hearing. The applicant does still want to move forward with this application for the general plan amendment, as the current future land use map designation does not match the R3 zoning on the property. So this would be beneficial to development in the future. The subject properties are shown as low-density residential land use category, which is consistent with part of the surrounding area to the east, but not consistent with the land uses and zoning to the north and south, as well as on the property. The applicant is requesting high-density residential, which would be consistent with the R3 zoning that's already in place. Approving this amendment will clean up a discrepancy between the land use map and existing zoning that has existed since the general plan was adopted in 2016, as the existing zoning has been in place for at least 10 years prior to that. Staff plans to address the larger issue of these areas being in conflict with zoning all across the city with the upcoming general plan update due in 2026. The zoning on the property and a lot of the surrounding parcels to the north and then up McCulloch on both sides, as well as on the south side of Acoma Boulevard, is all R3 limited multiple family residential. To the east is existing single family residential zoning land use. To the west is the City Plaza complex with Fire Station number 1 and the police station on the other side of Inlet Drive in P1 and MUN PD zones. The Planning Commission recommended approval of this application at its June 5th, 2024 meeting by a vote of 7-0. Mr. Mayor, that's all I have on this one. There will not be a rezone application that was approved by the Planning Commission the same night due to it being withdrawn.
Thank you, Mr. Gilbert. Are there any questions from members of the council for Mr. Gilbert? This is a public hearing. Would anyone like to address the City Council on this item? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing, bring it back to council for discussion or possible motion.
Mayor.
Councilman Polk,
Motion.
please.
Move to adopt resolution 24-3767, approving a minor general plan amendment revising the future land use map designations for 70, 80, 90, and 100 Inlet Drive, track 2293, amended block 5, lots 1 through 4, approximately 2.5 acres from low density residential to high density residential.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilmember Koch and a second from Vice Mayor Moses. Is there any additional discussion? Hearing none, we're ready to vote. Councilmember Dolan?
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. The next item is item 7.6, adopt ordinance number 24-1337, amending Lake Havasu City Code section 14.02.03, residential units, tables 2, 3, 24, 25, 26, 27, and 28, and section 14.04.01, dimensional standards, table 4.01-1, to remove maximum lot coverage percent requirements from residential districts. Mr. Gilbert?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Since I was brought on board last year as the planning manager, I've continually been looking at our development code from the standpoint of codes that make sense, codes that we can properly enforce, codes that have been maybe misinterpreted over the years and so on. So sometimes these will come up where we have a situation where, let me advance this here, where the lot coverage percentage limits that the city has not historically applied to residential developments. The city has used setbacks as a guarantor of sufficient open space on residential lots. With the citywide increase in land values, the need for accessory dwelling units for elderly population, other types of housing, along with changes in the macroeconomic climate since the pandemic, has all resulted in both developers, homeowners utilizing their property as much as possible. As staff examined the current situation citywide, it became apparent that enforcing this standard today would cause numerous existing residential dwellings, all parts of the city, to become legal nonconforming, i.e. grandfathered. This can create issues for property owners as well, particularly when trying to sell. It would also likely prevent many other properties that are not grandfathered from being able to install RV garages, accessory buildings on their property, an action that could push lot coverage over the limit in many cases. These types of residential improvements have been very common in Lake Havasu City and very desirable to pursue for new residents. So implementing enforcement measures at this point will not sit well with the community. Another point I want to make is exempt from this to a certain degree are PD approvals by the council that would incorporate reduced setbacks and reduced lot coverage area. Not trying to address those unless lot coverage wasn't addressed with the PD. But this is one example of, if you look, but each individual section of residential housing in the development code has a bulk use table where there's a maximum lot coverage listed, which is parroted here on this table. I just have this up as a bigger example, but I also have some slides to show what the issue is. Imagine this as your typical R1 single family lot. It's 10,000 square feet. It's got a 20-foot front, a 20-foot rear, and it's got 2 5-foot side yards. And you see the principal building there. If you imagine that as the building envelope that's between all those setbacks, that results on a standard 10,000 square foot lot with those set square. You end up with 54% of the lot occupied by building if you only use the buildable area, which is the buildable area is there for that. So you're already over the 50% lot coverage. So if you're wanting to, let's say, add a shed in the back, we would have to tell the applicant no. And I've actually had to do that in the last 6 months as I've been visiting with citizens at the counter, because their lots were more of the traditional smaller lots around town, and they just weren't big enough to get past the size of the original home. So another example I have here is, and these are examples, generic examples from online that are very hard to do a whole lot with, but they do provide good examples. This setback and yard requirements example here would be, if you see the shaded area in the middle, let's say that was the house, and someone wants to put a shed in the backyard. Under the 50% limit, if their house occupied half the lot, they wouldn't be able to do that shed that's in the back corner. So, and then we have limits on how much an accessory building can occupy in the rear yard. So essentially on a standard residential lot, by getting rid of lot coverage, you're still requiring and somewhere between 35 to 50% of the lot being open space simply because of the setbacks. So by getting rid of the lot coverage requirement does not substantially impact the open space you see on each lot. But what it does do is it gives the property owners that want to have, if they, for example, a lot of more homeowners today than before, post-COVID are wanting to, and with the property values where they are, want to stay in place, add the detached garage that maybe they wanted instead of having to move, because moving brings its own perils with costs and selling the property they have. So by getting rid of this would allow that to happen, and you still have considerable open space on the lots, and most of what's going to be taken up will be in the rear yard, not in the side or front, because those are already fairly minimal, 20 and 5s on the side. So staff believes that will be very low, high impact for the resident, low impact on enforcement problems for us going forward. I hope I provided a good explanation for that. Thank you, Mayor. That's all I have to report. I'll answer any questions the council may have.
Thank you, Mr. Gilbert. And this item also was heard before our Planning and Zoning Commission at the June 5th meeting, and is coming to us with a recommendation of 7-0. So, I mean, in the easiest terms, it's just allowing the setbacks already allow for that, and it allows the maximum flexibility for residents to be able to use their property. Setbacks, again, protecting the ability. So it makes sense for us to be able to move forward and give those options. So, sorry, Mr. Wisdom. Can you hear me? Is it better now? Okay. All right. Are there any questions or comments from members of the council? All right. This is a public hearing, but anyone would like to address the city council on this item? Yeah, please.
Pam Swenson. This impacts me personally because my daughter has some medical issues and we're going to build a casita on the back of our property for her to live in. And it was my understanding previously that the percentage allowed was 50 to 55%, not including the setbacks as far as usage. And then the state, I believe, just passed different percentages of, I think it was 60 to 65% allowable build on a piece of property. So what you're saying is that there's no percentage limitation as long as you meet the setback requirements?
Mr. Gober.
Ma'am, if the council passes the elimination of the maximum lot coverage percentage, then it would only be governed by setbacks.
Okay.
Which has been the traditional method, but it is still on the books to limit R1, for example, if you're in single family. I don't know what your zone is.
Right.
Because that could in fact impact lot coverage as well, but it would allow you to have a better chance of having that structure. You still have to go through design review.
Okay. But what you're saying, if this is passed, there would be no percentage limitation as long as.
That's correct. Percentage on lot coverage under roof, but you would still have to meet setbacks and other guidelines.
Correct. Okay. Thank you.
Bonnie Toy, the question I have is whether or not this would needed to be applied to commercial districts.
Yeah, Mr. Gober.
Commercial's different because commercial has to go through design review automatically, and they have to provide all manner of additional features that residential typically doesn't. You've got parking, you've got landscaping, you've got dumpster enclosures, buffers. There's a lot of factors that figure into commercial development. And so we're not recommending any change in lot coverage requirements for commercial zones at this time.
I just thought maybe it might be wise to do the same.
Mr. Tuneman.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify the previous question we had from the public, that the percentage for the entire lot is what we're talking about here. If the casita that she was talking about was going to be located in the rear setback, there are lot percentages for the rear setback coverage still. So it's 50%. So you can't take up more than 50% of the rear yard with structure. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, thank you. Ms. Swenson, did you have a follow-up question to that? If you make your way to the podium for the microphone, please. Yeah.
So in other words, there is still a percentage limitation on your property if you're building a casita on the back of your property with the setbacks. I mean, is the 50% including the setbacks, or is that in addition to the setbacks?
So the way that works, when you're talking an ADU, accessory dwelling unit, it's an accessory building. Mm-hmm. It's a separate requirement from the total coverage of the lot. So if you're placing a shed in the backyard, that requirement's there to prevent someone from filling the entire backyard with one shed building, right? Butted up 3 feet from the house.
Okay.
In other words, it's trying to create some space in the backyard so it's not completely consumed.
Okay, so
yeah, so
it is still confusing to me. I'm sorry. You either have percentages or you don't, and it sounds like that there still is going to be a percentage limitation, and it is going to differ from what the state just passed.
So when it comes to state law, those will go into effect in September. Mm-hmm. And so if we need to update codes, we'll do that. For your particular situation, you can see Mr. Tuneman and he'll answer those questions. But the action, if passed by council tonight, is going to make it easier for folks to do that. But there are still other requirements with setbacks and rear setback lot coverages. But Mr. Tuneman could talk about your specific project or property and answer those questions for you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address the City Council on this item? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back to council for any additional discussion or possible motion.
Mayor.
Yeah, Vice Mayor Moses.
Motion.
Please.
Yeah, I moved to adopt ordinance number 24-1337, amending Lake Havasu City Code Section 14.02.03, residential units tables 2.3, 2.4, 2.5, 2.6, 2.7, and 2.8, and Section 14.04.01, dimensional standards table 4.01-1 to remove maximum lot coverage percentage requirements from residential districts.
Second.
We have a motion from Vice Mayor Moses and a second from Councilmember Lane. Is there any additional discussion? Seeing none, we're ready to vote. Councilmember Dolan?
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. The next item is item 7.7, approve the cooperative purchase and lease agreement with Quadient Inc. to provide mailing equipment, supplies, and maintenance. Good evening, Ms. Olson.
Good evening. Thank you. Our existing lease is up in August, so we have looked at a new cooperative agreement and done some demos, and we are asking council to approve the cooperative purchase lease agreement with Quadient to start providing that mailing equipment, supplies, and maintenance. The information in the application indicates that there's a 60-month lease. That's about a little over $58,000. And then we also include, related to the postage rental machine, there is $50,000 worth of postage and mailing supplies. That just depends on the actual mailing costs that we incur based upon volume. But that cost is also indicated in this communication, so because that is part of this overall lease. Funds are available in the FY25 budget, and I'll answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions from members of the council for Ms. Olson? All right, this is a public hearing. Would anyone like to address the City Council on this item? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back to council for discussion or possible motion.
Mayor.
Vice Mayor Moses.
Motion.
Please.
I move to approve and authorize the city manager to execute the cooperative purchase agreement and multi-term lease agreement with Quadient Inc. for the mailing equipment, supplies, and maintenance services, and authorize city staff to exercise the option to renew the agreement for a maximum of 3 additional one-year terms.
Second.
We have a motion from Vice Mayor Moses, a second from Councilmember Campbell. Is there any additional discussion? Seeing none, we're ready to vote. Councilmember Dolan?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. Item 7.8 is approve the cooperative purchase for the refurbishment of one 2001 E1-100 aerial quint from Brindley Mountain Fire Apparatus, DBA Fire Trucks Unlimited. Chief Palafis.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, Council, City Manager, public. I have a short presentation for you to give you an update on our refurb and replacement program for the fire department for engines and trucks. So, Kelly, thank you. I'll try to make it short. If you want to put the timer on there, Kelly, I'll be okay with that. So, please don't do that. So what are our main priorities is basically to get our firefighters to emergencies to serve our community. How do we do that? Well, first I have to have number one asset is our employees. I have to have reliable rigs and apparatus to get them there, and I have to have a plan. So in 2020 when I came here, I can't believe it's been over 4 years. Time does fly, but it's been enjoyable. The thing is, having that plan is presenting to you and following that plan so we can keep on track on replacing our assets. So we do it through data, having a proactive maintenance program with Public Works and our maintenance group looking at age, mileage, type of service, reliability, maintenance costs, and overall condition of the rigs. So our overview, our entire fleet, we have 9 engines. All right. We have three quints or trucks. That's the ones with the ladders on it. We have 3 medic units, and we have 3 medic units arriving shortly too for our ambulance transport program. command staff support vehicles, specialty vehicles to serve our community. So this kind of gives you a layout of the amount of equipment that we do have for our citizens to provide the best level of service to them. We have over 50 pieces of apparatus in the fire department alone. Now, our replacement program, we've been very successful with the support of council and city manager budgeting appropriately for our refurb and replacement program. And I'm sure you're well aware in 2014 when we made the purchase of all vehicles at one time. So a total of 5 vehicles. That's 4 engines, 1 truck. Now that program would have worked well if we could replace all of them at once. But doing small incremental phases would be more cost effective for us, and the introduction of our refurb program. So we started a refurb program. Since we started this, we've had 2 refurb programs, engines that were refurbed. They're back in service as we speak, and we've had nothing but good luck with it. They brought them back to the OEM specs, which is the original specs of that rig at that time. We also have a new engine in service, just one in service just before 4th of July. So we're replacing our plan is to replace them fiscally and responsible, reducing the cost to our taxpayers. So our plan is up here is a 5-year plan that we spread out our purchases over time. One thing that has hurt us is the delivery time. We're no longer able to get a rig in 12 months. It's about 48 months to 60 months, depending on the type of apparatus. So we had to adjust our plan and look at when we're going to order it, when it's delivered. So we've worked through that, and our refurbs are coming back sooner than our newer rigs. So we established this plan, and we currently have 1 engine on order right now. If we get approved for a new engine, we'll have it on order, but we still have our refurb program, which I'll get into, and this is the item that we'll be looking at. Looking at the cycle of a fire engine, and this is a great illustration of the time that when we go through the whole spec, purchase it, it's taken about 45 to 50 months to just get it in production and delivered. So we look at 2 months for training, for outfitting, a month for training, and then we have a 10-year service life. So the rigs that we all bought in 2014 are up to be reevaluated, which is perfectly fine built in our plan because we're going to look at our refurbs of refurbing them at 10 years. Usually they go into reserve for 5 years, and it's going to be based on mileage, hours, and hours are really more detrimental than the mileage of it, of how long their idle time. And then it goes into surplus for an engine. Our refurb program, we look at our engines at 10 years. When we're looking at them, we're looking at the cost of maintenance. Is it worth it to invest in refurb in these rigs? What I love about Arizona is the weather, and it doesn't put that harsh corrosive material or salt, snow onto the rigs, and its solid base of the engine is great. We just need to refurb the motor, the pump, and look at the wiring. The heat does take a toll on them, but they are still a solid rig that's worth investing to extend that life on it. So the refurb project is usually, depending on an engine or truck, is between 12 and 24 months. Then we extend that life for about 8 to 10 years. After that, we're done with that refurb. It goes into surplus. There's no use continuously refurbing rigs. There's time that we have to let go of it. And based on our program, it's after our refurb is done. Once we refurb it, it's going to go to surplus. So it could potentially still be a good rig for our volunteer department somewhere else. Our ladder trucks. Ladder trucks are big, expensive items. The turnout for building and delivering is 5 years right now. Again, same with outfitting training, and their service life is about 15 years, frontline 5 years surplus. So we're looking at our truck, which is a 2001 E1, still has a solid frame, still very, very actually low miles, about 90,000 miles on it. The thing is, when we were going through our analysis, this was worth it to refurb it. So we've already done 2 engines. We're going to try this truck. We want to extend this truck for another 10 to 15 years. And the cost of this is well half of what a brand new truck is. The going truck that we spec'd out for our replacement is about $2.4 million. We can refurb this truck We have a quote for about $799,000. We have contingency funds in there because there's some unknowns at sometimes when you're doing a refurb, is just to have that extra for the unforeseen circumstances. So before you tonight, Honorable Mayor and Council, we would like the approval to utilize a Brindley Mountain, which is Fire Trucks Unlimited, to refurb our 2001 engine, our Quint E1 for the amount of not to exceed $900,000. So I know that was a lot, but if you have any questions, I think it's a great illustration. I really appreciate the support. Like the city manager said, was that this is a new fiscal year. We budget for this. It was approved in our budget. That's why I'm here at the first meeting in July, to get these big purchases going and getting them here and finished. So if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer. I know it's a lot of information. Just a couple of the other slides of how we do our data, just looking at it. This is the truck that we'll be refurbing. So we actually purchased it in 2001 for about $618,000. We're going to invest another potentially $900,000. We're still ahead of the game. So again, it's just looking at what we're utilizing, the funding that we get your support from, and capitalizing on the opportunities to extend the life of this rig. Here is our new engine. In my next item we'll get to, but I just kind of give you a layout of when we purchased this one was for $850,000. The last one we purchased in 2023 was for 1.1. And then I'll get to the next agenda item when we get to that one. But you see the increase. The increase of business is getting substantially. And the delivery times are too. I look at some of the new rigs that my kid's going to be in high school by the time we get it. It's amazing how long it is. This is the refurb that was out in display. It's actually in service. You can see that we purchased it for $384. It cost us $382 to refurb it. A new rig you saw is $1.2 million. I mean, we're doing well, and it's high quality work, and they're still functioning and serving our community greatly. And then this is our original refurb when we started the program. So here's the 2014s, and our next plan is, and again, this plan gets reevaluated each year. These are the ones that are going to start going to the refurb program. But the thing is, we still have to buy new rigs. So. And then here's all the other pieces of equipment that will graciously allow us to serve this community. And if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them.
Thank you, Chief. Are there any questions from members of the council for the chief?
Mayor?
Yeah, Vice Mayor Moses?
Yeah, Chief, I just want to thank you. I love your plan. I think it's brilliant to get us out of that big chunk and the nothing phase. And so I really appreciate your planning. Talked to a lot of your guys. They think it's a really great plan. They love the refurb. So just keep up the great work.
Thank
really
you,
appreciate
sir.
you.
Thank you for the support.
Those of you that attended our last council meeting, we actually had one of the refurbs there and the other truck as well. So you can actually see it all at work. Any other questions or comments from members of the council? All right, this is a public hearing. Would anyone like to address the city council on this item?
Murray, great job. Great plan. I was in the fire service for 15 years, and I'll say right now, I haven't seen as progressive an organization as I see here in Lake Havasu City. And as a taxpayer, you're doing the right job. You're keeping my taxes down, and that's the right way to go. So this is an excellent program that's out there. I've seen the rigs. There's a lot of changes that are taking place with the NFPA, and Chief of Office is doing a great job staying up with that. So my hat's off to you.
Thank you.
Pat Willett, resident. My question is there a bidding process for these refurbs or something? Is there other options that, I know she said there's one company that you like a lot, quality work and everything, but I know in business and stuff, a lot of government stuff, you have to have multiple bids before you can accept before anything. Thank you.
Yeah, great question. Yeah, Chief?
Thank you, Mayor. Great question. The thing is, we're using a cooperative agreement where the bidding process has already been vetted. So it allows us to look at other corporations that do refurbs. And the refurbs, there's not many companies that actually do the refurbs like Fire Trucks Unlimited does. There are still some out there. When we originally did this, we actually went out for an RFP looking for any other suitable companies. But then when we found a co-op, the bidding process is already vetted. We already get the lowest, best price possible. And the thing is, we already have history with them too. So we know the process. We feel like we're getting a good price. It's conveniently located. Not saying that's always the best, but it does cut down on some cost. And the nice thing about our refurbs, we drive them there and then we drive them back. And if they break down, you know exactly where they're going. They're going back to get fixed because we still get a warranty on these rigs too. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Would anyone else like to address the council on this item? All right, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing, bring it back to council for discussion or possible motion.
Mayor, motion.
Yeah, Vice Mayor Moses.
Yeah, I move to approve the cooperative purchase for the refurbishment of one 2001 E1 100-foot aerial quint through the Sourcewell contract number 120921-BLE, Brindle Mountain Fire Apparatus, DBA Fire Trucks Unlimited, in the amount not to exceed $900,000.
Second.
We have a motion from Vice Mayor Moses, a second from Councilmember Campbell. Is there any additional discussion? Seeing none, we're ready to vote. Councilmember Dolan.
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. Item 7.9 is approve the cooperative purchase of one Pierce Velocity fire engine from Hughes Fire Equipment, Inc. through the Houston Galveston Area Council contract. Chief Palafis.
Honorable Mayor, Council, City Manager, Public. Again, this is just going for a replacement program of our new engine. We're utilizing the Houston Galveston Co-op, which is another, they already bid the process. We get a base price. We have a spec at the fire department. So the thing is we're buying the same exact rig that we just saw out there with minor modifications that some during the build and stuff that, not saying that we missed, that we saw some improvements and some upgrades that were needed to make it more efficient for us. So with this, and we're asking for the prepayment, saving us about $125,000 is prepaying for the rig. So we're asking for the approval of $1,218,469.72. With this was also budgeted appropriately. And I sometimes get scared with my numbers that I run them so close. But again, we're within our budget for this fiscal year, and we're looking to just move forward to continue with our replacement of this new rig. Now, the delivery for this will be projected in 2028.
It's unbelievable. Yeah. Thank you, Chief. Are there questions for members of the council?
Yeah, just kind of a silly question. So when we get our new fire rig that we're purchasing in 2024, is it a 2028 rig?
So this last rig was a 2023. So we'll probably get it at 2027.
Wow. In 28.
Yeah.
Okay.
So just like we received the 2024, we received it in 24, it's actually titled as a 2023.
Okay. But it'll still be good for till 2038.
The thing is, the engines on that, I reevaluate at 10 years, 15 years, and then if in 10 years it's worth a refurb, we're going to refurb it.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right, this is a public hearing. Would anyone like to address the city council on this item?
Dates are driving me crazy. Chief, do we have the rigs already for rotation number 7? That's all I wanted to ask.
That's a great question. Yes, we do. So that was all part of our plan when we started purchasing the new rigs. We already have an engine for Station 7.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address the city council on this item? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and bring it back to council for discussion or possible motion.
Sure.
Yeah, Councilmember Lane.
Just one comment, then I'll make the motion, but it's interesting. It's going to be a 2027 probably. You wonder what the price will be then. Oh, yeah. So we'll get a 2027 rig at 2024 prices. So that's a good thing. Good. So I move to approve and authorize the city manager to execute the cooperative purchase agreement with Hughes Fire Equipment Incorporated. Approve 100% bonded prepayment for the purchase of one Pierce Velocity fire engine in the amount of $1,218,469.72, and authorize city staff to exercise the option to renew for 3 additional one-year terms.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilmember Lane and a second from Vice Mayor Moses. Any additional discussion? Seeing none, we're ready to vote. Councilmember Dolan?
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. Item 7.10 is approve the sole source purchase of 2 LifePak 15 replacement units and associated equipment from Stryker Medical. Chief Palafis.
Honorable Mayor, Council, City Manager, Public. Before you is our part of our replacement program that we started when I started here in 2020, replacing our cardiac monitors. Now, these cardiac monitors are a life-saving piece of equipment that have a lifespan of about 7 to 8 years. We've been using LifePak even before my time, and due to technology, again, that 7 to 8 period, these pieces of equipment do get outdated. The thing is, we're sticking with LifePak 15. The new edition is out 35, but my take on that, I don't try it out. I let others try it out, tell me how it is before we invest. These are a big investment, but the key is these are used every day. These cardiac monitors are a highly critical piece of equipment for our members to use. Our members have to know how to use them, and we've standardized this piece of equipment. This allows individuals, our medics, to do 12 leads. 12 leads is taking a picture of the heart in 12 different spots. And if we recognize that there is a cardiac arrest or an event, it'll display on the monitor. This monitor will actually transmit to the cardiologist at the hospital, open up the cath lab, and right when we get them into the hospital, they could be sitting on the table, getting a balloon, and opening up that vein because of this monitor. This monitor not only does this, it actually paces, it cardioverts, it gives a defibrillation, it does automatic blood pressure, it does end-tidal CO2 when we intubate someone that we know they're oxygenating someone correctly. This is, like it said, it's a LifePak. It saves lives, and we have a replacement program that we purchase 2 every year. Now, the thing is, we do trade our old ones in. So this is not saying the last time that we see the LifePak 15, but we're going to look at the new technology, hopefully pilot out the LifePak 35 and see how that works for us. But it's been a very good piece of equipment and reliable for our members to use. So before you is I'm looking for the approval for the sole purpose of purchasing it through Stryker Medical in the amount of $75,439.49. These at least will be here within the next 3 to 6 months. They don't take years. So, but if you have any questions, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Chief. Are there any questions for members of the council for Chief Palafis? Excellent. All right, this is a public hearing. Would anyone like to address the city council on this item? All right, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing, bring it back to council for discussion or possible motion.
Mayor?
Yeah, Councilmember Koch.
Motion?
Please.
Move to approve the sole source purchase of 2 LifePak 15 replacement units and associated equipment from Stryker Medical in the amount of $75,439.46.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilmember Koch. We have a second from Vice Mayor Moses. Is there any additional discussion? Seeing none, we're ready to vote. Councilmember Dolan.
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. The next item and our final public hearing is item 7.11, approve agreement for professional services for the North End Wastewater System expansion to NCS Engineers, Inc. Mr. Wolf.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here tonight for the award of these professional services agreement in front of you in your council packet. It's to prepare the final design services for the North End Wastewater System expansion. A little history and purpose. In 2022, the city received the updated wastewater master plan recommending some improvements to the wastewater system at the North End to maximize the lift stations and wastewater treatment plants. In that master plan, it was anticipated that growth would occur in the north area northern area of Lake Havasu City. A year ago, in July 2023, the council awarded a study and report for the sub-area facilities in that north end, and some modeling assessment for optimizing the efficiency of multiple sewage pump stations in that north end. In March of 2024, this year, the report made recommendations for project design and implementation. Future development areas. This area is at the north end, and the top right of the slide is what we call the influent pump station, sewer lift station. It's our main lift station, and at that lift station, everything that goes to that lift station is sent to the north treatment plant for wastewater treatment. There are two primary pump stations that pump to that IPS. However, the Canterbury sewer lift station and this other one here, the Refuge, they pump to the west side on a force main, the west side of the 95. And currently they pump south where this isolated force main is labeled. They pump south all the way down here to the lower bottom near Bombay Lift Station, and then under the highway to the Bombay. And then from there, a large amount of sewage is then pumped right back up to the IPS and then to the treatment plant. With this optimization, we're calling it, we're going to upgrade basically the Canterbury lift station and the Refuge lift station, reverse the flow in this piece of force main here and go bore under the 95 and then go directly to the IPS, but therefore bypassing this long section of force main that goes to the Bombay. The effects of this will be a much more efficient system for both the two pump stations that are being rehabbed with new motors and electrical. Another advantage of this project and why we're calling it optimization, it takes, as you can see, quite a bit of sewer effluent out of the Bombay system. So it actually has a net increase in the capacity for the Bombay system. That's a quick overview of the design that we're looking to implement. And then in 6 months, we'll have before you a project to actually work on saving the city funds for electrical and pump station operation. And with that, I have questions, but the suggested motion before you tonight would be to approve the professional services agreement for the North End wastewater system expansion with NCS engineers in the amount of $287,907. Any questions?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Wolf. Are there any questions for members of the council? Yeah, Councilmember Campbell.
Mayor, this is a really positive thing for our community. It's long waited. We're ready. I'm sure the public works staff and city manager can all agree that this has been long overdue. So this is a real positive direction for our community. So thank you. And that's all I have to say about that.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? All right, this is a public hearing. Would anyone like to address the city council on this item?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Joan DeZero. Just had a couple questions on the agreement to make sure I'm understanding it. One thing is just typo. If you look at 1.1B and C, they just misspelled Chenoweth. They did it right on the first page, but they didn't on the second. But on the first page where it's outlining each of the things that are done, item 5 is design the upgrades to expand the capacity. I think it's referring to items 1 and 2 where they're going to make them larger. I just want to make sure that was correct because I couldn't tie the designing to anything else that was being accomplished. Usually I'm used to design and then they list what they're designing. So I think it was item 5 and I think it's referring to 1 and 2 on there, but just wanted to confirm that.
That's item 5 on page 1?
Yes, on page 1 where they're listing all the things they're going to do. Right. They put the design, but then I think they're referring to 1 and 2 on the increased capacity. I just want to make sure I'm understanding that right. Is that?
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Would anyone else like to address the city council on this item? All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Bring it back to council for any additional discussion or possible motion.
Mayor.
Yeah, Vice Mayor Moses, please.
I move to approve the professional service agreement for the North End Wastewater System expansion with NCS Engineers, Inc. in the amount of $287,907.
Second.
We have a motion from Vice Mayor Moses, a second from Councilmember Lane. Is there any additional discussion? Seeing none, we're ready to vote. Councilmember Dolan?
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. All right, item 8 is our call to the public. This is an opportunity where citizens have to address the city council on items within the jurisdiction of Lake Havasu City. Your comments are limited to 3 minutes. Again, there will be a countdown clock on the screens throughout the room if you just pay attention to that. We aren't able to have a two-way conversation during this part of the meeting. We can listen intently to any comments or suggestions that you may have, but we can't have a two-way conversation. With that being said, you don't have to sign up for Call to the Public. We didn't have anyone sign up for Call to the Public, but if you'd like to address the council, please make your way to the podium and state your name for the record.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Has the bridge been finalized? The roadway, has that all been, it's done, it's going to go to print?
Yeah, Mr. Wisdom, we can't have a two-way conversation here, but
just nod.
It's in the works. Yeah, so there's actually a video was posted today on the city's website, social media, and I've already said too much because it's not on the agenda. But grab me after the meeting and we can have a conversation about that.
Well, there's someone brought up a point about instead of putting the bridge where it is, that we take and move it to Mulberry and run a bridge across Thompson Bay. We would save a whole bunch of money in building a road. We wouldn't interfere with London Bridge Road. We would have a little bit longer bridge or maybe tunnel underneath us Thompson Bay. But that would we already got the traffic and the signals right there at Mulberry. And it would probably come out on down by Nautical Inn somewhere. And you just have a straight road right into the area of the island. I think it's a great idea. The other thing, the current plan you have of having a roundabout coming off of the bridge, really not practical. They need to run the roundabout all the way down to the signal light, where you actually have 4 roads there now. You hit the London Bridge Road or the Bridge Road would be the 5th road. And the roundabout they're talking about now is just for 3 roads. And it's going to be real small, which may create some conflicts. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Wisdom.
Bonnie Toy. Hey, since he brought up the whole bridge thing, just want to say, I know you can't answer my question, but I just wanted to, well, I would like to ask the question and one day maybe get an answer, but why can't the second bridge be a pedestrian bridge, a 2-lane pedestrian bridge that's closed off so that in case of an emergency, which is what I thought the second bridge, the Freedom Bridge, was supposed to be for an emergency in case the London Bridge was blocked, then you could take out the blocks from the pedestrian bridge and open it up as needed for vehicles. Because honestly, the 4th of July weekend, there was a bigger backup at Dutch Bros than there was on McCulloch Boulevard going on to the island this year. I just thought I really would like to I know you can't answer that question. Also, cooling stations around the city. I know people don't like to talk about those things. Turns out that, maybe the lake is not the best place to cool off. And sometimes people may actually need a building to cool off in. So just like to mention that. Thanks.
Would anyone else like to address the council during Call to the Public?
Evening, Council. Pat Willett, resident. I really improved the 95 improvement was a great feature for the city. I'm glad that would happen and everything. The only problem I had with it was when they were doing the construction on it, right there at North Palos Verdes Boulevard on the lakeside, they were using that area for equipment storage while it was going on. Well, they conveniently left two big, large boxes full of the brushes that were on the sweepers and stuff. And as last as I saw, I didn't look tonight, but they were still there. If they can get the company to come back and maybe pick those up, it'd be great. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Would anyone else like to address the city council during call to the public? Seeing none, we'll close the call to the public. Item 9, current events. Are there any council committee reports?
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, Councilmember Lane.
Yeah, I'd like to give a committee report on what's going on over at Go Lake Havasu. As everybody knows, Go Lake Havasu's been in the news lately, and so I want to give an update on what's going on. They're continuing to make personnel changes, both with new hires and also with new board members. They have quite a professional board of people across the city that are really have the best interest of Lake Havasu, and they're local residents that volunteer their time for this. They've set two main goals. They want to rebuild and straighten the foundation of the Go Lake Havasu brand, and they want to foster transparency with the public. But they're doing that by designing a new tourist website to ensure that all the activities are listed, and their goal is to be the one-stop shop for all events in Lake Havasu, and that new website will be up and running by December. Also, they are tossing out the tagline, "Play like you mean it." That will no longer be the tagline in Lake Havasu. They are going to adopt a new tagline, "Escape, Experience, Enjoy." They're also creating a new business website, glhbiz.com, and that will be separate from the tourist website, so people can go and it'll provide a clear and transparent information about the financial and the operational aspects of Go Lake Havasu, so that we're not intertwining the tourist activities with what the business part of Go Lake Havasu actually is. They'll be creating economic impact data for our local business partners and residents to showcase the return on investment information. How much bang are we getting for the buck that we're giving to them? They're going to change some of their marketing. They've been targeting far away areas for people to come here. They're going to target more efforts towards primary drive locations, such as Phoenix and the Las Vegas area. Try to get people to come here for, just a day or two to drive down. And then they're going to do a refresh at the visitor center. They have a new Pancake the Borough is one of our local residents wrote a book called Pancake the Borough, and it's about all about Lake Havasu, and donated it to the visitor center. So there'll be some refresh stuff going up there. And then just some of the highlights that have happened. USA Today has ranked Lake Havasu as the 6th best water sports lake in the entire country. Havasu lighthouses were featured in the Arizona Office of Tourism in their June newsletter. And then the Phoenix Magazine, the Arizona Travel Awards, we got best event because of the Balloon Festival and Fair, the best community event for our community cleanups, our best distillery for Copper Still, the best small town hiking and biking trail for Slot Canyon, the best small town museum, the Museum of History, the best small town park, Sarah Park, and the best scenic view at the Bridgewater Channel. So that's my update on Go Lake Havasu. Good things are happening over there, and those people are working very hard. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Lane. Yeah.
If I may bring it, since I have the microphone,
Please.
one other thing. I just want to give a kudos to the Lake Havasu Police Department. Last council meeting, I talked about one of our residents that was the victim of a scam and got scammed for $77,000. But Officer Melendez, if I'm saying his name correctly, responded when we found out that this was a scam, was able to convince this individual that he was being scammed. The officer made a quick phone call, and yesterday the wire transfer was reversed. He got all $77,000 back. So great job to our police department for responding so quickly and helping this individual out. So watch out for those scams. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Lane. Any additional council committee reports? All right, item 10, our future meetings. Our next meeting is on Tuesday, July 23rd, 2024 at 5:30 p.m. It's a regular meeting. And then on Tuesday, August 13th, 2024 at 5:30 p.m., we will also have a regular meeting. Item 11, are there any future discussion items? Seeing none, motion to adjourn.
Moved.
Be kind. We'll see you next time. We are adjourned.